If you would like to make delicious sourdough bread, but you don't own a Dutch oven or clay pot, then this video is for you. Hi, I'm Ron, and thanks for clicking on this video. And if you're new to my YouTube channel, please take a moment to click the like hand, the subscribe tab, and notification bell. In this video, I demonstrate my simple method of mix, weight, bake sourdough bread, but I do so without using a clay pot or Dutch oven while producing this beautiful sourdough bread. Okay then, let's begin. I fed my starter last night. It's now morning and time to mix the sourdough. Looks like the starter tripled in volume during the night and has fallen back a bit, but it's still more than doubled in volume. My 2-loaf recipe calls for 900 grams of bread flour, 600 grams of water, which I use this 4-quart Pyrex bowl to mix the dough in, 200 grams of sourdough starter, and 20 grams of salt. I either use sea salt or kosher salt, but lately I've been using mostly kosher salt. Sometimes I'll put the bowl of water in the microwave for 1 minute to bring its temperature above 90 degrees to speed the process along. But today I'm in no hurry and will use room temperature water. I use 2 spoons to remove sourdough starter from the quart jar, trying to keep the jar from becoming too messy. I rotate the sourdough starter to a clean jar every week or two. I like to use the handle of a wooden spoon to mix both the starter and the dough. And yes, I do own a Danish dough whisk. Actually, I own a couple, but I just prefer the handle of a wooden spoon. An offset spatula works perfect for scraping down the insides of the quart jar. I try to keep about 50 grams of sourdough starter in my quart jar at all times. I wonder exactly how much I do have remaining today. Let's find out. As you can see from this picture, I actually have 125 grams of sourdough starter remaining in my quart jar. Since my 2-loaf recipe calls for 200 grams of sourdough starter, and I like to feed 1 to 2 to 2, I need to reduce the amount of starter in the jar to an amount closer to 50 grams. I feed my sourdough starter from a mixture of 1/3 all-purpose flour, 1/3 rye flour, and 1/3 whole wheat flour. The mixture is kept in this silver number 10 canister and in the freezer. Recently, while watching a video on Bon Appetit YouTube channel titled "A Day at the Oldest Restaurant in Brooklyn," I found it interesting when the head baker stated that they feed their sourdough starter the same mixture as mine: whole wheat flour, rye flour, and all-purpose flour. And although store-bought whole wheat flour is pictured here, whenever I can, I like to grind my own whole wheat flour. I first grind the wheat berries in my Magic Mill grinder, which is one of the first things we purchased when we got married. It's probably 40 plus years old. And then you push in two little plunger buttons that are kind of hard to get situated, but then it comes off, and I pour the flour in the canister and weigh it. And however much that weighs, I add the same amount by weight of rye flour and then all-purpose flour. Mix it all up in the silver canister and place it in the freezer. Okay, let's get back to mixing this dough. I still need to add 900 grams of bread flour and 20 grams of salt. The dough is rested for 30 minutes, and it's time for the first of 2 or 3 stretch and folds, followed by a few coil folds, all at 30-minute intervals. During the first stretch and fold, in addition to building structure in the dough, I'm also feeling for any pockets of flour that didn't get hydrated during the initial mixing. I have a video on my YouTube channel devoted entirely to stretch and fold and coil fold, which you may find interesting. After stretch and fold and coil fold, the sourdough will rest for a few hours until it is increased in volume by 1/3. The sourdough has increased in volume by 1/3. It's now time to pre-shape, shape, place in bannetons and into the fridge for overnight cold fermentation. I divide the sourdough and use a scale to weigh the sourdough to ensure both halves are about the same size. The dough has rested for about 10 minutes and it's time for final shaping. One will be round and the other will be oblong. I try to create some surface tension in the dough during shaping. It's the following day and time to bake the dough. I'm just going to demonstrate the oblong batch of dough. I pull the edges away from the banneton so it'll release easy. And it's going to go into a hotel pan about 4 inches deep. Dough slips right out of the banneton. With my razor blade, one big slash from end to end, and a few decoration slices on each side. The pan obviously is not hot. I'm going to cover it with aluminum foil. It's going to go into my kitchen oven that has preheated at 500 degrees. And it'll bake for 34 minutes. Here's a close-up, another view of what I just did. Again, I'm pulling the dough away from the edge of the banneton so it releases easy. With the hotel pan with parchment paper, flip it over, comes out easy. One big slice down the middle, and some decorative slices on the side. Okay, into the oven. Let's see how it bakes. The sourdough has been baking for 34 minutes. If you try this at home, be very, very careful when you take the foil off, because steam will come out and it will burn you a bit if you're not careful. And I've used this foil a couple of times in previous bakings. Let's see what the bread looks like. Oh my, isn't that gorgeous? Now I'll put it back in the oven at a reduced temperature of 400 degrees for 16 more minutes. Okay, here's the bread. Isn't that beautiful? It was in for an additional 16 minutes at the reduced temperature of 400 degrees. Let's see what the internal temperature is. Anything over 200 is good. 204. Perfect. It's a pinch darker than I would have liked. Perhaps I should have only baked it for maybe 14 minutes or so. But isn't that bread beautiful? Baked in a hotel serving pan with some aluminum foil on top. Anyone can do this. The next time I bake the sourdough bread in a hotel pan, I think again I'll do 34 minutes at 500 degrees with the aluminum foil on, then just taking the bread only, putting it back in the oven on the rack at a reduced temperature of 400 degrees at something between 12 and 14 minutes. This loaf was baked for 16 minutes and it's just a pinch darker than what I would like. But isn't that bread beautiful? Thanks again for watching, and make it a great day.